The message hit me like a punch to the chest. I'm leaving you. Heading to Palm Springs with my 25-year-old boyfriend. I've taken all the money. Don't try to stop us. It came through at 3 a.m. Gulf time, moments after I'd wrapped up a grueling 14-hour shift on the oil platform. My name's Miles Harrington, 52, with nearly 3 decades spent offshore, drilling in some of the harshest conditions on Earth. I was still wiping grease off my hands when I saw Krista's name light up my phone. My wife of 18 years. Another message followed, a screenshot of our bank account. Balance, $0. Where $142,000 should have been. She added a kiss emoji. Like it was a joke. I didn't throw the phone. Didn't yell. I just sat on my bunk in our cramped rig quarters, typed back, sure. Good luck. Then I shut my phone off and went to shower. That was all I could do. The next day, I skipped breakfast. Went straight to work. My second-in-command, Jackson, noticed. He kept eyeing me during safety checks, but he knew better than to ask. We had 16 men relying on us to keep the operation running. No space for emotional breakdowns out here. During our short lunch break, I opened my email. Krista had already filed for divorce. Her attorney was demanding spousal support and claiming abandonment because I worked overseas. She also mentioned her emotional support partner was now living in our home back in Odessa. I didn't respond. I didn't breathe. Just shut the laptop and went back to the rig. That night, I sent one email. Not to Krista, to my cousin Brendan in Houston. He's an accountant and the only person who knew everything about my finances. 2 words, activate winter protocol. It was a phrase we hadn't used in years. But Brendan responded in under 3 minutes, already on it. Do not engage until you're home. I still had 2 more weeks on this rotation. 12-hour days under the punishing desert sun while my entire world unraveled thousands of miles away. I could have requested emergency leave. The crew would have understood. But I didn't. What would I even go back to? Better to keep working. Finish the job. Earn the paycheck. That night, Vincent, the rig supervisor, dropped by my quarters. Everything stable? He asked, and he wasn't just talking about drilling. I nodded. Everything's under control. And it was, just not in the way Krista ever expected. I met Krista nearly 2 decades ago at a friend's bait shop in Odessa. She was 31, sarcastic and sharp-witted, working the register and making fun of city folks who didn't know which end of a fishing rod to hold. I was 33, back home between contracts, helping my buddy with inventory while catching my breath from another stint in the Middle East. We hit it off quick. Married less than a year later. Some said it was fast, but it made sense at the time. I already had a house paid off, thanks to a stock windfall from a small oil producer that got bought out, and a steady career path offshore. She said she loved that I was solid, reliable. I loved that she had fire. The rotation schedule was brutal, 2 months on, 1 off. But the money made it worth it. 6 months of work brought in more than some of our neighbors made in 2 years. We made a pact. She'd manage things at home, and I'd build our future. For a while, it worked. But year 12 marked the beginning of the slow unraveling. It was subtle, small complaints about missed birthdays, pointed comments about her friends' husbands being home for dinner. Once, she asked if I really needed to take a Saudi contract. I brushed it off. It was just the nature of our life. At 47, I noticed she stopped asking when I'd be home. No more snapshots of the garden or our dog. Our video calls got shorter, more distant. I chalked it up to the natural shift that comes with time. Comfort replacing chemistry, silence filling in for spark. But I should have seen it. Last Christmas, I flew home to find the entire house transformed. New furniture, new color scheme, like a showroom floor. I asked about it. She shrugged, said she needed a change. I didn't question what kind. 2 months before this rotation, I caught strange transfers from our joint account. She said it was for home repairs. Claimed the foundation needed work. I drove by the house before my flight. There were no contractors. No repairs. Just a black Audi in the driveway. A car I'd never seen. For weeks ago, she stopped answering my calls. Said she was busy with a new project. I almost flew home early. But I convinced myself to trust the woman I'd spent 18 years building a life with. Then 3 days ago, a message from Harold, our neighbor. A photo of a moving truck outside my house. Thought you should know, was all he wrote. I didn't reply. Didn't panic. Sometimes the most powerful move is no move at all. Sometimes the truth just rises on its own. I wrapped up my shift that day and went back to my bunk. The satellite phone rang. It was Brendan. You sitting down? Just tell me, I said. He didn't sugarcoat a thing. She's been siphoning money for 14 months. Transfers to a private account under her maiden name. Started small, then bigger. We're talking $214,000 in total. I gripped the edge of the bed. That was far more than the $142,000 I thought was missing. She also changed your life insurance beneficiaries 6 months ago and took out a $40,000 line of credit against the house. Forged your signature. I didn't speak. Just sat there, feeling the steel of the rig hum beneath my feet, like my entire life was vibrating out of control. The guy? I finally managed to ask, my voice dry and flat. Name's Devin Forrester, Brendan replied. 25 years old, just like she said. Former personal trainer. No real job history in 3 years. 3 prior relationships, all with older women. Each ended the same way, within 18 months, after he drained what he could. I didn't need more than that to understand the pattern. But Brendan wasn't finished. There's more, he said, voice low. Credit card statements show 2 one-way flights booked to Palm Springs for next Tuesday. She's not just leaving. She's trying to vanish, with everything, before you even land stateside. I sat there in silence. No yelling, no storm of rage. Just a sudden, precise shift, like a frozen gear clicking into place. Something inside me turned cold. She hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. She'd engineered an exit plan with surgical care, transferring funds under aliases, forging paperwork, redesigning our life behind my back while still smiling for video calls and telling me she missed me. The betrayal didn't hit me hardest. The planning did. I stood, walked to my locker, and pulled out my laptop. Logged into a private email account, one only Brendan and I had ever used, and opened the dashboard for a holding company we'd quietly built 8 years prior after I'd watched a coworker lose everything in a divorce. Winter Holdings, named after my grandmother's maiden name and the creek that ran through her old Montana property. Balance, $1.6 million. For 8 years, I'd quietly funneled 70% of my income there, declared, taxed, but legally separated from our marital assets through the shell structure Brendan had designed. It wasn't hiding money. It was protecting it. Against this very possibility, I drafted one email to my attorney in Houston. Initiate Operation Cold Return. Then I shut the laptop, tossed on a hoodie, and walked down to the mess hall. I poured myself a cup of stale coffee, sat down, and for the first time in days, I felt hungry. I landed in Houston 38 hours later. Brendan was waiting at the airport with a burner phone and a thick folder. She's been calling your regular number nonstop since yesterday, he said, walking briskly toward the parking garage. The bank froze her new account. Standard flag for unusual transfers. They're holding the funds. They need you to come in and verify. Does she know I'm back? I asked. Brendan shook his head. Only me and Thomas. Thomas, my lawyer, and the guy already preparing the paperwork. But there's something else, Brendan said, sliding into the driver's seat and pulling out his tablet. She's been texting someone saved as D on her phone. We pulled the logs from her iCloud. He handed it to me. I scrolled through thread after thread. Krista and Devin joking about me still being stuck offshore while they made plans for their new life. Spending my money. Shopping for houses. But then I saw it. The thread that shifted this from betrayal to something darker. Krista, bank froze the money. Need Miles to verify in person. What do we do? Devin, he's stuck on the rig for 10 more days. Tell him your mom's in the hospital. Get him to give you power of attorney. You're still legally his wife. Krista, he's not answering. Devin, try harder. We need that money before closing, or we go to Plan B. Krista, I'm not comfortable with Plan B. Devin, it's just insurance money. Accidents happen. He works a dangerous job for a reason. I stared at the screen. The words didn't just sting. They made my skin crawl. Brendan looked at me. They synced everything to your cloud. She used your Apple ID to set up her new phone. Never changed the password. Are these admissible? I asked, my voice low. He nodded. All backed up. Time-stamped. She gave us everything we needed without realizing it. We drove straight to Thomas's office downtown. He was already waiting, suit pressed, jaw tight, papers spread out across a walnut desk like a general planning an ambush. He didn't waste time. Divorce petition is drafted. We're filing undergrounds of fraud, asset theft, and conspiracy. We also have a criminal complaint ready for the forged loan documents and power of attorney abuse. But, he paused, flipping open a new folder. There's a wrinkle. I already didn't like the sound of that. She filed a domestic violence claim against you yesterday, Thomas said flatly. She's trying to establish that she fled the marriage due to abuse, emotional manipulation, financial control, and fear for her safety. My mouth went dry. I've been 6,000 miles away for 7 straight weeks. She's not alleging physical abuse. Emotional coercion is the term she used. It's all fabricated, of course, but it's designed to win her exclusive access to the house and to push a restraining order through the court. I leaned back, took a long breath, and Thomas gave a thin smile. We're ready for it. He slid a document across the table. Motion to dismiss based on perjury. Includes your company badge location data, which shows you haven't left the rig for 7 weeks. Entry and exit stamps from customs match. And your phone records show no threats, no arguments. In fact, very little contact at all. I flipped through the proof. It was airtight. She wants a restraining order to lock you out of your own house, all while her boyfriend lounges in your living room, he added. Not gonna happen, I said, signing the motion. One more thing, Thomas said, tapping his pen on the desk. You need to stay officially off the grid. Let her think you're still out at sea. That way, when we serve her. I want to be there, I interrupted. I want her to see me. Thomas gave a slow nod. Then we'll make sure she does. That night, I stayed at Brendan's place. I didn't touch the regular phone. Krista kept calling, texting. Voicemails started pouring in. Brendan played one for me on speaker. Miles, please. There's been a mix-up with the bank. I moved the money to a safer investment, like we talked about, but now they froze it. I'm scared. Please call them and clear it. Please. I need you. The performance would have fooled me a month ago, maybe even 2 weeks back. But now I saw it for what it was, desperation. She's spiraling, Brendan said. The house in Palm Springs closes in 5 days. She's cornered. Good, I said. Let her feel it. The next morning, I logged into the remote security camera feed I'd installed in the Odessa house 3 years earlier. Krista had either forgotten it existed or thought I couldn't access it from overseas. She was wrong. There, on screen, was Devin, lounging shirtless by the pool, sipping from one of my vintage whiskey bottles, wearing my college sweatshirt, his feet up on the Adirondack chairs I built with my own hands. Krista appeared next, pacing, anxious, flustered, talking on her phone. Her gestures were sharp, frustrated. She didn't look like a woman enjoying her victory. She looked like someone watching it all slip through her fingers. Brendan walked in, holding his laptop. You need to see this, he said, eyes grim. He turned the screen toward me, Devin's full background pulled from hours of digging. He's done this before. 3 times. Every time, the same formula. Meet an older, financially stable woman. Get her to leave her husband. Move in. Burn through the money. Then disappear. News clippings. Civil court records. Social media threads. One woman still paying off $60,000 in debt he ran up in her name. Then Brendan dropped the final hammer. His second girlfriend's ex-husband died in a suspicious accident. Single car crash. Rural road. No skid marks. Guy had been driving that road every day for 20 years. No charges filed, but the timing lined up exactly 6 weeks after their divorce was finalized. He let the silence hang. Just then, my regular phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. Brendan hit play. Miles, I'm begging you. The account, the bank, they won't listen to me. I was just trying to protect our future. Please help me fix this. You're the only one who can. The acting was Oscar-worthy, but I wasn't the same man I'd been when I left for the rig. Let her keep talking, I said, voice like ice. I want her to bury herself. By noon, Thomas had arranged an emergency court hearing for that same afternoon. The judge was Honorable Winifred Winters, an old-school, no-nonsense veteran of the bench with a reputation for seeing through theatrics and crushing false claims like paper cups. Brendan and I met Thomas for a quick lunch at a diner near the courthouse. Over black coffee and barely touched sandwiches, Thomas handed me a manila folder. Your neighbor Harold dropped this at my office this morning, he said. Inside were photographs. Krista, Devin, 2 movers, loading antique furniture into a truck. My grandfather's hand-carved desk, my late mother's cedar chest, my father's World War II medals, heirlooms that had been in my family for generations. They weren't just fleeing. They were looting. They're clearing out the house whether they get the money or not. Thomas confirmed. They're trying to disappear. I closed the folder. New plan, I said quietly but firmly. I want to go back. Thomas frowned. I wouldn't advise. Not to confront them. Just to watch. From Harold's place. I want to see it fall apart. With my own eyes. Thomas and Brendan exchanged a glance. I want to be there when she's served. I want her to see me. I don't need drama. Just the truth. Delivered in person. Thomas nodded slowly. All right. I'll arrange it. That night, I arrived in Odessa just past midnight. Harold opened the door with a nod and a handshake. No words needed. He was a retired petroleum engineer. He'd seen enough betrayal in business and life to understand exactly what this was. They've been loading boxes all day, he whispered, taking all the good stuff, leaving behind the rest. He led me to the front room. His wide living room window had a perfect view of my driveway. They've got 2 trucks scheduled. The big one comes in the morning. Last load. Anyone else been by? Woman with a clipboard yesterday. Real estate agent. Took pictures. I think they're selling the place. I blinked. Selling my house. Harold nodded. I called Thomas immediately. Checked property records. Now. Then I sat at Harold's kitchen table, surrounded by paperwork Brendan had prepared. Bank statements. Credit card logs. Dozens of hotel charges. In our own town. For dates Krista claimed she was visiting her sister. Phone records showing late-night calls to Devon, all the way back to last year. The deeper I read, the colder I became. This wasn't just betrayal. It was surgical theft, a dismantling of our life, executed with calculation and cruelty. At dawn, Thomas texted confirmation. Krista had listed the house for sale 2 days earlier. She forged my signature on the agreement. Listed at 30% below market value to guarantee a quick close. By 8:30 a.m., Krista and Devon were outside, loading a few last items into Devon's black Audi. My grandmother's silver picture frames. A watch my dad gave me before he passed. Small valuables, easy to hide, easy to run with. At 8:45, a large moving truck pulled up. 3 men climbed out. At 8:55, an unmarked sheriff's vehicle parked behind them, blocking the driveway. 2 deputies stepped out. A woman in a tailored suit followed. Court officer. Courtesy of Thomas. I rose from Harold's window seat, exhaled slowly, and walked across the street. Krista opened the door. The look on her face will never leave me. She expected delivery men, not consequences. Not me. Krista's expression shifted in 3 beats. Confusion, realization, then a flash of panic. Miles, she breathed, clutching the doorframe. You're supposed to be on the rig. Surprise, I said calmly, stepping fully into view. Devon appeared behind her, one arm lazily wrapping around her waist, posture smug until he saw the deputies flanking the court officer. His hand slipped away like it had touched a hot stove. Mrs. Harrington, the officer said, tone firm. You're being served. This includes an emergency asset freeze, criminal charges for forgery and fraud, nullification of the property sale, and a divorce complaint based on conspiracy. And you, she added, turning to Devon, are named in the criminal complaint. Devon blinked. You can't do this. She's afraid of him. We have a domestic violence claim on file. Dismissed, I said, stepping forward. This morning, Judge Winters herself. Turns out it's hard to abuse someone from 6,000 miles away. The officer nodded. The court reviewed text messages between you two, including those referencing Plan B. The judge took particular interest in your comments about my client's life insurance. Devon paled. Krista's eyes welled up. Miles, please. This is all a big misunderstanding. No, I interrupted coldly, gesturing to the truck. This is theft. You were planning to erase me. Take everything I worked for, everything tied to my family. And now? You have 30 minutes to collect personal items only. Toiletries, clothes. Everything else stays pending inventory. Krista's lip trembled. She looked at the truck, then at me. Where are you going? Home, I said, turning my back on her. But not the one you tried to sell. Behind me, the deputies began their search and documentation. The final move was in play. 3 weeks later, the courtroom was quiet and cold. I sat with Thomas. Krista sat with her lawyer, 2 seats over. Devon was nowhere to be seen. He'd vanished 2 days after being served, taking the rest of Krista's cash and her jewelry with him. Just as Brendan had predicted. The judge reviewed everything. Bank transfers, forged documents, video evidence, and text messages, especially those about accidents and Plan B. When she reached the point about the forged real estate listing, she removed her glasses and stared directly at Krista. Mrs. Harrington, she said with quiet severity, are you aware of the criminal penalties for conspiracy to commit insurance fraud? Krista fumbled. It wasn't like that. Devon was just. Save it for the DA, the judge snapped. This court's role is asset division. And in my 30 years on the bench, I have rarely seen a more calculated act of financial deception within a marriage. She turned to me. Her tone softened. Mr. Harrington, While your preemptive asset protection might be questionable in the eyes of your spouse, the court finds your actions legal, properly disclosed on tax filings, and consistent with prudent financial planning. Her ruling was swift. All transferred funds were to be returned to me. The Odessa home was declared solely my property. Krista's request for spousal support was denied. The evidence of conspiracy and fraud was referred to the district attorney. As I rose to leave, Krista stood. Miles, wait. I didn't. Some victories don't need words. Silence is heavier than any speech. 6 months later, I stood on the porch of a log cabin surrounded by pine trees and snow-dusted meadows. The sun dipped low behind the Bitterroot Mountains, casting long amber shadows over my 40 acres just outside Missoula, Montana. The property had been part of Winterlight Holdings all along, quietly purchased 5 years ago as part of my long-term retirement plan. Krista had no idea it existed. She never once asked about the company I used for consulting income, never bothered with the paperwork. She'd been too focused on the money in the obvious accounts and left the real treasure untouched. The forgery charges had stuck, though she'd avoided jail time with a plea deal. 5 years probation. Monthly restitution payments that she'd never be able to keep up with. Last I heard, she was back in Tulsa, living with her sister, working retail, and blaming the world for her mess. Devin, gone. Brendan tracked him to Arizona, shacked up with a recently divorced physician 10 years his senior. The cycle continued, like a parasite hopping hosts. I didn't care anymore. My house in Odessa had sold in the spring. I didn't even pack. Harold took care of everything, shipping the heirlooms to Montana, donating the rest. He still called sometimes, giving me updates about the town, the people I once knew, and those I was better off leaving behind. The money wasn't an issue. Between savings, offshore contracts, and a modest natural gas royalty from a property I'd inherited in Arkansas, I could have retired comfortably even without the holding company. But with it, I was free. That afternoon, a padded envelope arrived in the mail from Brendan, the final dissolution paperwork for Winterlight Holdings. Tax filings complete. Assets transferred. Structure closed. Its mission was finished. I poured myself a glass of bourbon and walked back to the porch swing I'd built that summer, though it still smelled fresh. The cold mountain breeze stirred the pines around me like whispers in a cathedral. No one needed anything from me. No rig crew asking for tools or safety checks. No wife pretending to miss me while draining accounts. No lies to untangle. Just silence. Pine needles falling. Snowmelt trickling into the distant stream that gave Winterlight its name. My phone buzzed once, a number from Canada. A junior executive from an energy company offering a consulting gig. 6 figures. Remote work. Minimal travel. Just enough to stay sharp if I wanted it. I'll think about it, I told him. And I meant it. But not tonight. Tonight wasn't for thinking, working, or planning. Tonight was mine. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, I was truly alone, and I had never felt more whole. The following morning, I watched the mist roll over the hills, coffee in hand, feet up on the railing I'd sanded myself. The birds were already up, chirping into the stillness like they owned the place. I let them. Out here, everything felt borrowed and eternal all at once. No alarms. No offshore dispatches. No pleading texts from someone who once called herself my partner. Just life. Honest and unhurried. I hadn't heard from Krista since the divorce was finalized. The restitution she owed had been reduced to monthly installments, the kind that barely made a dent. She wasn't charged criminally for the Plan B texts, thanks to a slick defense and the lack of direct action, but the judge's referral to the DA hung over her like a shadow. Devin, as predicted, was gone again. The woman he was with? A doctor out in Scottsdale. Brendan said he'd already drained her business credit card by the time she started suspecting something. People like him didn't just disappear, they cycled. But I was no longer part of anyone's rotation. A week later, I visited a small lake on the edge of my property. It had no name, no history, just cold water and the echoes of distant elk calls. I sat on a rock near the shoreline, skipping stones the way my father taught me when I was a boy, and I finally said the words out loud. I forgive her, but I'll never forget. Not because I held on to hate. I didn't. I let that go the moment I stepped off the rig. But forgetting? That would mean erasing the lesson. She taught me how patient betrayal could be. She taught me how love can rot silently, beneath routine, behind fake smiles. She taught me that peace isn't something given. It's earned, often at a terrible price. And maybe I should thank her for that. Back at the cabin that night, The stars came out in full. Montana skies don't hide anything. They stretch wide, like they're daring you to keep holding back. I didn't. I let go of the pain. I let go of the bitterness. I let go of the version of myself that stayed in a marriage far too long, clinging to loyalty while the other person quietly packed their exit. That night, I slept without dreams. No betrayal on a screen. No bank accounts flashing zero. No whispers about insurance policies. Just stillness. A man in a cabin. A life that no one else could touch. And that's the end of my story. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. If this reminded you of something you've lived through, I hope you found strength in the ending. And if you're going through it now, know this. You're not crazy. You're not weak. And you're not alone. Sometimes the quietest man in the room is just the one who already survived the storm. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like if this story hit home. Subscribe for more real stories told with raw honesty.